Welcome back to the 2-minute warning. Today we are on ThriveFantasy website looking at the top prop picks for the Bucs versus Cowboys game coming up this Thursday, the first game of the season. Before we get into the video, a question of the day involving one of the props available for this game is Dak Prescott over or under 305.5 total yards. Would you go over or under? Drop your comment down below, and at the end of the video or throughout the video, you will hear Jay and I's picks. But again, here we are on ThriveFantasy website. Let's head on over to the prop lobby and start looking at them. Jay, here we are right here, the one that I just mentioned, Dak Prescott, 305.5 total yards. Jay, what's your thoughts on this one?
We got to remember, last year, Dak Prescott came out slinging in his first 4 games. His first game against the Rams, he had sub 300 yards, but after that, it was 400, 470, 500.
502 against Cleveland.
He was just taking off last year, and I get this is the toughest defense he's going to face, and it's a whole different offseason. It's a whole different system. CD's going to be more familiar. Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper is just more chemistry with this team. Everyone's just hungry, looking for a bounce-back year, and while that might contribute to the passing yards, there's just too many factors for it to be a for sure thing. Now, if you ask me my personal opinion, what am I picking for this fantasy pick? I would put over because I do have confidence in him, but it's not like a 100% put all your money in it. This is to me one of the ones I would feel comfortable with, but again, I'm not putting the bank down. But all in all, there's just no way in a tough game that's likely going to be a shootout. Amari Cooper versus Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb versus Antonio Brown, Michael Gallup versus Chris Godwin. There's no way Dak doesn't get 300 yards, especially with the little bit of extra you could get on the ground. I don't want to say it's a for sure bet, but I do feel safe saying it.
Yeah, for either of these right here, the passing yards, 288.5, or the total pass plus rush right here, I would have a really hard time going under on either. We know what Dak is capable of regular season, especially based off of what he did last year in the, 3 or 4 games he actually got to play, 4 games, I think. Plus, Jay and I did a preview of this game earlier this week where we talked about really how this game would play out and how the Cowboys, or what they would need to do to win. And one of the things that Dak really has to do if they want to win is come out and throw for 350 yards, because they're going to have to really keep up with the Bucs offensively, because we don't expect Dallas's defense to really be able to stop the Bucs. So for either of these ones, I would have to go over. But the more interesting one to me is the 288.5 pass yards only, because yes, Dak is a pretty mobile guy, good at scrambling. He definitely could easily pick up whatever the difference is there, less than 20 yards, 17 yards. But I would go for the pure passing one just because I think there's a little higher odds there. But either one, I'd go over all the way, just because I think Dak's going to need to put up those numbers if they stand a chance to win. Next at Zeke, you want to pick Zeke or not? In my opinion, the way his last season went, I would not be inclined to make an over/under pick on Zeke.
Considering both of these are rushing and rushing plus receiving, we have to remember they lost Zach Martin, their offensive guard, who's going to be missing the first week due to COVID. That could hurt the run game exponentially. That could be the split-second gap that's no longer there for a run play. And against Tampa's defense, which was the number 1 ranked rushing defense last year, I believe they only let a 100-yard rusher once or twice. I know Dalvin Cook got it once, but it might have been another guy one time as well. I just don't like that for sure bet. Again, that was 100 yards. We're talking about 55 yards for Zeke. But this is one I would have to avoid. Just to make it clear for you guys, the props, you only got to pick 2 of these to actually, start making some money. And if you skip Zeke, there's still plenty to go. You could bet on Dak, you could bet on Tony, you could bet on Tom Brady. We'll get in later. So it's not a big deal that you have to skip Zeke if you're not feeling comfortable with it. But of course, if there's a Cowboys fan watching, you might have some confidence in the guard replacing Zach Martin. You might believe Zeke can easily get 55 yards. You might believe he can easily get 78. But if you're asking me, it's not a for sure over, for sure under. It's just a for sure, I'm going to avoid it if I can on this one.
Yeah, Zeke's season last year was really unimpressive. He fumbled a lot of times, and he just was so inconsistent that 55.5 total yards is pretty reachable for any running back in the NFL. But I would avoid making any of these picks on Zeke just because of pretty much exactly what Jay said. 55.5 total yards, or 55.5 rush yards is not a lot. But with Zeke's season last year, I would avoid it because there's a lot of other options, and we haven't even got to the Bucs side of the football.
For sure.
And I know Jay has confidence in Tony Pollard. Tell me about that.
I just have confidence because I feel like he is on the come up as far as snaps go. He's getting more and more every year. Now, Mike McCarthy, we only got so much of a system last year. It was only a 1-year sample size, and that was without Dak, so I could be predicting wrong here. But I do think Tony Pollard could get over 32 total yards is what you need between rushing and receiving. Again, I don't need him to get 80, 60, 50. I need 32 yards, and I think he could pick up 18 rushing and get a 14-yard catch.
You can pick that up on 3 carries and a catch or 3
exactly.
carries.
And I don't need
reachable.
20 carries from Zeke to get to 55 yards. I need 3 carries and 1 catch from Tony Pollard. It just seems like a bet that I'm willing, or a pick that I'm willing to be okay with and comfortable with. And at the CeeDee Lamb one, he's going to be looking like possibly just as good as Amari as far as targets. And I think he's got better yards after catch. Potentially, you could argue Amari Cooper's a better route runner off the ball or off the snap. But I think with the ball, CeeDee Lamb's slightly more dangerous just due to his awareness and elusiveness. But again, I'm feeling good about Pollard, and I think I'm feeling good about CeeDee as well.
Yeah, I want to group these 3 together, CeeDee, Amari, and Michael Gallup. So we can pretty much all agree, or at least the 2 of us can, that the Dak over is pretty realistic. So for that to happen, we're looking at 305 or more, 306 or more yards. CeeDee, Amari, and Michael Gallup have both got to, or all 3 got to blow away these overs.
Yeah, you're either doubling down and making a lot of money, or it could go sideways.
But for me, those 3 are overs because where are those receiving yards going to come from? It's going to be these 3 guys. This is one of the best receiving rooms in the NFL. So between CeeDee, Amari, and Michael Gallup, I think over for all 3 of them would be the right choice. What do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely, if I'm betting on Dak or picking Dak, I got to pick with these guys. It's just 300 yards, 60 CeeDee, 60 Amari, 50 Michael Gallup. You still got 100 yards left to add up together to even get there. Yeah. I just think these guys all got to count for at least 65, 70 yards. I know that's bold, especially against Tampa's defense, but I do predict this game to be a major shootout. For sure.
So there are some more Dallas options, tight end Dalton Schultz, but those are the main ones for Dallas. Now moving over to the Tampa Bay side, I think, at least we think, Tampa Bay has the slight advantage in this game defensively, but overall, Jay, what do you think? First off, Tom Brady, 3 or 2.5 total yards.
I love Tom, but I don't count on him to be a gunslinger. He's got just as good as weapons as Dak does. He's got Evans, Godwin, Antonio Brown, but 300 yards is hard for me to predict. This is probably one if I had to, I would avoid, but also if you put me in a prediction or predicament of yes or no, over or under, I'm going with over on Tom Brady. I do think in week 1 he will come out hot. Now, he could sneak it by at 308 yards. Mm-hmm. He's not going to throw 400 in my opinion, but if this game turns out to be a shootout like I'm predicting, and I think a lot of people are at least hoping for, Tom's going to have to put up some numbers, and I could see these 2 abandoning the rush game. You know, that we'll get into Ronald Jones a little bit, but if Zeke's not getting the ball a lot, Ronald Jones isn't getting the ball a lot, and we're seeing a lot of this game be through the air, I'm betting on both quarterbacks to get a lot of yards through the air.
Yeah, I kind of put myself in a bind here because when we did our Bucs Cowboys preview, I think I predicted a score of 42-35 in favor of Tampa Bay. But for some reason, I just don't see Tom coming out and throwing over 400, 300 yards. Yeah. So it's kind of tough how both can happen. But I do expect this game to be a shootout. Tom Brady just doesn't strike me as a guy, or just he really isn't a guy to come out and throw the ball 400 yards. So I say
he could easily put up 270 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Yes.
Big game.
That's kind of what I'm looking at, and then a couple touchdowns or a touchdown or 2 out of the backfield. So I would have to go. This is one that I would kind of avoid for the reason why it's hard to decide. But I might want to go under on this one because I just don't see Tom Brady is absolutely slinging the football. But that would also be kind of irresponsible to do because we expect this game to be a shootout. So I think I might have to, all in all, go avoid Tom Brady unless you really have confidence in him to go over, because I would not go under on Tom.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at Rojo, like I said briefly, it's hard because I do think that backfield's kind of crowded. It's not Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard thing where we know Zeke's going to get 80%, but I do see Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette each splitting it roughly 50-50, maybe 60-40. It's a little interesting to not see Lenny on here. That does mean Ronald Jones is getting the start, but he got the start last year and then Lenny came in. So nothing's official for very long. This is another one I'd probably avoid. If I had to pick between these 2, do I want to bet on one or the other? I'd probably go with the top one just for that receiving yard upside. I think if we consider receiving yards, he would at least get 8 yards. I think if he gets 1 catch, he could get 4 yards alone. If he gets 3 catches, we're looking at 20 yards. So if I had to pick one, I'd go over on the total yards for Rojo, but this is another one I probably wouldn't have as much confidence in. I'd like to avoid. Where I like my money for the Bucs is the receiving weapons.
Yeah, Rojo's a tough one. You just explained it pretty well. I do think that the run game will have a solid role in this game for the Bucs, but again, this is also a game we expect there to be a lot of passing because it's a lot of going back and forth. So avoiding this might be the best option. But I'm gonna have to go with what Jay said as far as if you want to take a pick on Rojo, go for the total yardage one because he's bound for a couple checkdowns out of the backfield. Tom Brady's a big fan of that. So I would go, if you're gonna pick one, I would go over on the 55.5 total yards for Rojo. Now moving in to the receiving room for the Bucs.
Yeah, notice you don't see Mike Evans on here. There'll probably be one uploaded by the time the game gets closer. I think they're just figuring out the odds a little bit more. O.J. Howard's another tough one, like Rojo with Lenny. O.J. Howard with Gronk. There's just too much riskiness for me to feel comfortable in. Where I like my money going to, where I like my fantasy pick going to, is AB. I'm pretty sure he's getting the start over Scotty Miller. And even if Tom Brady doesn't hit the 300 yards or 303 yards like I think he will, 250-yard game, 50 that could still go to AB. He was heating up at the end of the season. I know, like I said, with the Dak one, weird off seasons, you can't predict anything off of last year going into this year, but still, it's a small variable I want to consider, probably 1% that I still want to hold on to, and I do think AB is going to heat up. And we know Dallas's defense is nothing great, but the best they do have in their secondary is going to be focusing on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And I think AB is looking at this year to make it a year where he's trying to get his money right again and show he could still be a guy that can be worth up to double digits in money. So I think he's going to be playing at his absolute best, at least compared to the last 2 years, of which we've barely seen. And 48 yards doesn't seem too unreachable for me.
Yeah, I like AB a lot here for the same reason. I expect him to possibly slide under the radar. Yes, he's Antonio Brown. You look at him 5-6 years ago with Pittsburgh, he was the best receiver in the game. Yeah. So obviously people know who he is, but last year had such an inconsistent year, and he was trying to stay out of trouble, which he did well, but people didn't believe that he would be worth anything in Tampa Bay. So I believe in him, and looking at 48 yards is just, well, really one big catch, and he gets into open space. And I do think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin will be taking the heat of the Dallas secondary out of the picture for Antonio Brown. And we know Tom Brady and Antonio Brown got together, and Tom is what convinced Antonio Brown to come to the team. So I think Antonio Brown is going to do what it takes to help this Bucs team. So I would take the same thing. I would say over for AB. In a game with all this yardage, I think AB is going to have a big role in it.
Yeah, and just to quickly overgo Godwin, not to discredit him, but I do actually discredit him as far as we were focusing a lot on AB. But I actually do think I would take the over on Godwin. Again, this would probably be the one I would avoid. I'd feel more for sure about AB. But if you're looking to double down and you're feeling good about the Bucs, Chris Godwin's a solid pick as well. I do think he's got some good sneakiness to him. He's got some decent yards after catching 62 yards. I think he's the best deep ball threat for Tom Brady. Not necessarily the best, but I think his favorite, even over Mike. Therefore, I think he could definitely snag 62 yards.
For sure. So those are all the prop picks for the first game of the season, Bucs versus Cowboys. Remember, ThriveFantasy.com or ThriveFantasy on the App Store. Use our code 2MW for them to match your first deposit up to $100. And back to the question today, I think we pretty much went over it, but back to the Dak over-under. Either one of these, I think the right pick is over. What do you think?
I got to go over. I think he's going to come out gunslinging. This can be a shootout.
For sure. Remember, 4 days or 3 days from now, NFL starts, so tune in. Bucs versus Cowboys. Guys, thanks for watching. 2 minutes.